Good afternoon, Sujata madam. You're on mute, ma'am.
Yeah. Is it visible, my screen?
Yes, yes.
Right. Right. We now, till now, we discussed about try, catch, finally, and throw. These four keywords which are used for exception handling. We talked about these four keywords till now. We will see the execution of these four also. After explaining about throws, we will see the execution, right? Now, throws. The last keyword, what we need to know about in exception handling. Now, where we use this throws keyword. Suppose I have a method which is capable of causing an exception. So I have written a method. Let us say, so here I have written my method as method 1, let us say, which contains some logic. My method contains some logic, right? So within this logic, it is having some exception, right? Now, how to implement, how to execute this method? So in which class this method is present, for that class, I need to create an object. So with that object, I need to call the method. With that object, I need to call the method, right? Now, if I have an exception in this method, if it is called somewhere, if this method is called somewhere, there the method can't be executed if it contains any exception. So, that is, we need the method should guard itself against that exception when it is called by other object. So for guarding itself, for guarding the method itself against that exception, we can use throws statement with the method. Throws statement with the method, right? There we can write a list of exceptions which might cause in that code, right? So here, this is the syntax that what we follow for writing the throw statement. Here, this is the return type of the method. Here, this is the method name. Whatever the parameters that are present in that method, I need to write those parameters. Here, I need to, after this method, I need to write the keyword throws. And here I need to write the list of exception classes which might may occur in the body of the method, right? So by writing like this, wherever I call this method, the method can guard itself from that exception. That is, the exception can be handled there, which is present in that method, right? Now here you can see the example for this, then you will clearly understood. Now let us see here. I have written a class T, which contains a constructor. Here I am showing example with constructor. In the same way, you can write with method also, right? So here I have written the constructor T that throws null pointer exception, right? This throws null pointer exception. Here I have written a single exception class. If you want, you can write multiple exception classes by separating them with commas, right? Here I have written a statement here within this constructor. And here I want to throw a new null pointer exception, which is nothing but demo. Demo is my null pointer exception, right? Now, here I created an object for that. Now, I have that creation of object is written within this try block. So whenever the object is created, so if any exception occurred, that exception can be thrown to the catch block. Here the catch block catches that exception, and the same exceptional class is found, and it can be handled. The exception can be handled. In the same way, how you are writing here, in the same way you can write with the method also. You can write it with the method also. The throws can be written with the method also. Right. Now, I'll show you the execution of all these different programs, different exception cases. By seeing that execution, you can clearly understood. Right. Now, is this visible? Is my window is visible?
Yes.
Now here you can see, is this a code window is visible? Program is online Java compiler.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Here you can see that I have written a class arithmetic exception demo. I have written the main method. So here I am showing the first case. That is, there is no any exception. Right. Here I have taken A is equal to 30 and B is equal to 10. Now I am trying to divide A with B and I want to print the result. So I thought that there may come some exception. That's why I have written these statements within try block. If I thought that arithmetic exception may come, so that's why I have written catch block. Corresponding to try block, I have written catch block. Within this catch block, I have written arithmetic exception, which is the exceptional class that I am thinking that there may occur, and its object, and I called the get message method with that object. Now I'll try to run this program. What happens? Let us see. Now result is equal to 3. So do you understand that here there is no any exception occurred? This is the first case. 30 by 10, which gives 3. Here the 3 is printed. Result 3 is printed. Right? Nothing happened here. Normal flow of execution happened. Right? Now let us see. I'm changing the value of B. I'm changing the value of B as 0. Now I will try to run this program. Now I'll try to run this program. What is there here? Divide by 0. Divide by 0. That is, here 30 is there and B is 0. I tried to divide 30 with 0. Here exception occurred. In this statement, exception occurred. So this statement is not executed. Whatever the exception occurred, that is thrown here. This catch block caught that exception, and here whatever the exception occurred, the same exceptional class is present. So the exception is handled, and this statement, whatever the get message I given, that statement is printed. Or otherwise, if I want to write any user-defined statement, I can write the user-defined statement here itself. So now whatever the user-defined statement you want to write, that can be written. So here I am writing that this program contains divide by 0 exception. That I want to write. The same thing will be printed here. If you run this, here you can see this program contains divide by 0 exception. Right. This is the second case. Exception occurred, which is handled. Right. Now we are going to see another one, which is nothing but exception occurred, which cannot be handled because of wrong exception class I mentioned. So here you can see, so actually my exception is arithmetic exception. But here, what the exception class I have written? Array index out of bounds exception. I have written array index out of bounds exception. Right. Now, let us see what happens if this is. Now, here you can see error. Exception in thread main java.land.arithmetic exception. So here you can see that arithmetic exception is occurred at line number 8. Here arithmetic exception is occurred. So it shows an error message. Why? Because here we are not written corresponding exceptional class. Here exception occurred, but it is not handled. Now in the same program we seen 3 cases. First case is exception not occurred. Second case is exception occurred and it is handled. Now third case is exception occurred but it is not handled. So why? Because here we have written wrong exceptional class. Now I'll try to write right exceptional class. Now multiple catch blocks I can write, right? So with that multiple catch blocks I am trying to catch that exception. Now here you can see I'm going to write exception, arithmetic exception. Now let us try to run this program. What happens? Let us see. So now what happened? Class arithmetic exception, one error. What is that error? Can't find the symbol. So spelling mistake here. I have written spelling mistake. Now, right. See, run the program. What happens? Now, this program contains divide by 0 exception. Now, what happened? Now, here I'll change the statement. Array index out of bounds exception. Here I'll change that statement because you need to understand which statement is printed that you need to understand. For that, I'm changing that statement here. Right now, I'm running the program. What happens? Let us see. Now, so here also it contains an error. What is that error? Here, I missed this statement. That's why it is showing error. Right. See, this program contains divide by 0 exception. What happened here? Actually, some exception occurred here. So this statement is not executed. This exception thrown to the first catch statement. But here, corresponding class is not found. So again, the exception is thrown to next catch statement. There, here corresponding class is found and this catch block is executed and then exception handled. Exception handled. Right. So this is another case, multiple catch statements. So I hope that you are understanding. And now I want to write some statement after handling the exception, whether the statement will be executed or not. I want to show. So here, this is what? Statement after final catch. Right. So whether it will be executed or not, I'll show. Now, here you can see. This program contains divide by 0 exception. That is, this statement is printed. After this statement is printed. Right. Now exception is handled. Since exception is handled, this statement is executed. This is the normal termination of the program. Right. Right. I hope you are understanding. Next, suppose, for example, here the exception is not handled. In this case, whether this statement after final catch will be executed or not. Let us see. Now, here, this statement is not executed here since we not handled the exception. Now, even exception handled or not, I want to execute this statement. So, where I need to write this statement, I need to write within the finally block. If I write this statement, even I may handle the exception, may not handle the exception, this statement will be executed. Let us see that one, whether it is executing or not. Now here, statement after final catch. This statement is executed first, then it is showing error message. Why it is showing error message? Since I am not handled the exception. That's why it is showing that message. Even though I handled the exception, that statement will be executed. Here I am writing again, arithmetic exception. Now let us see. Now here I try to handle the exception. In this case also, it will be executed. These programs contains array index out of bounds exception statement after final catch. That is, exception is handled and then finally block is executed. Now, so you understand what you understand from this is even I handled the exception or I may not handle the exception. What the statement which is present in finally will be executed always. That you need to understand. Right. Now, I'll show you a program with throw. I'll try to show you a program with throw. Right. Right. Um, 1 minute, I'll show you program with throw statement. Right. Now, here see, I have taken a class throw example, have written the main method. So now, actually, hello is not an arithmetic exception, but I want to throw it as an arithmetic exception using the new keyword. So I have written within try, throw new arithmetic exception, catch arithmetic exception, and here I want to print this message, right? Now, here you can see, if you run the program, what will be printed? Now here you can see, hello will be printed. So here this hello is thrown as an exception. The same exceptional message is printed. Now, if you want to write some other statement here, that statement can be written. If you want to write any other statement here, that can be written. Here, I want to write hello is thrown as arithmetic exception. That I want to write. Now, here you can see. Same statement, whatever the statement I have written, that statement will be printed here. Hello is thrown as arithmetic exception. This is the thrown example, right? Now, if I want to show an example for throws, so for this, here I am writing a method. Void method 1. So I'm not writing any parameters here in this method. Here I want to write throws arithmetic exception. So here I am writing an arithmetic exception. It want to throw an arithmetic exception. Now here I am going to write int c is equal to 56 divided by 0. I'm trying to write that statement. Now, here I'm going to write a print statement. So, in this print statement, I want to print C value. Whatever the C I have written that I want to print. Now I'm going to close my class. I'm going to write another class. Class A, I'm writing. Now in this class A, I'm writing main method. In this main method, what I'm going to do is here I'm preparing an object. I'm writing an object for this method, for this class. O is equal to new throw example class. Now, with this object, I want to call that method, right? O dot method 1. O dot method 1. So, where I called. So, this method throws arithmetic exception if exception occurs. That exception should be caught here. So, after by using throws, here I want to write exception caught. By using throws exception caught, that I want to write. Now see how this will be executed. Now here try open, try close, catch open, catch close, for my main closed and my class closed, right? Now I'll try to run the program. What happens? Let us see. Now this is an example for throws. Main method not found in class throws example. It is showing that it should have the main method first. Then it should have the next methods. So that's why it is showing that error. Just I changed the order. Now here you can see by using throws exception caught. Now here the arithmetic exception, whatever the exception thrown by method 1, that was caught. Right. If exception not occurred, what happens? Let us see here. Just it prints the value of C. 28. Here you can see. I hope that you understand all these keywords. I hope that you understand all these keywords. Now, I'll share the next session PPT. So, in this first session, we talked about various keywords what we used for exception handling, right? Now, this is the second part of exception handling. This is the second part of exception handling. Here, what we are going to discuss in the first part of exception handling, we talked about what is an exception, what is error, what is the difference between exception and error, and what about the keywords try, catch, finally, throw, throws, and we talked about all these keywords in the first part of my exception handling. Now, in the second part, we are going to see some built-in exceptions and creating custom exceptions and handling exceptions using method overriding and creating chained exceptions. What about the chained exceptions and exception subclasses? All these things that we are going to see in this second part of exception handling, right? Now, here you can see these are some of the built-in exceptions. We already used some of these exceptions in our previous session. We used arithmetic exception, we used array index out of bounds exception. Not only these two, we may have class not found exception, file not found exception, we may have IO exception, interrupted exception, no such field exception, class like that. Different exceptions may be present, right? Now I'll provide the details of all these different types of exceptions. Now here you can see first one, IO exception. So when the IO exception is thrown, IO exception is thrown when an input operation or output operation is failed or interrupted. That is, for example, while middle of the execution of the program, if you do any changes in your program, in that case, you can find interrupted exception. Some interruption is done through the IO devices or input-output operation failed. So because of those, IO exception can be thrown. Now, SQL exception, which is an exception, provides information on a database access error. Now, whenever you try to access a database, there, if you found any error, that exception can be thrown as an SQL exception. Next, file not found exception. This exception is raised when a file is not accessible or doesn't open. If that file is not present or file not opened, file not accessible, in all these cases, we can find file not found exception. Now, class not found exception. So whatever just now we seen that while we are executing the program throws, program example for throws, there we seen an error message. There the class throws example in which main method is present is not found, like that we seen, which is nothing but class not found exception. This exception is raised when we try to access a class whose definition is not found in your system or in the location where you specified, right? Interrupted exception. So this exception is thrown when a thread is waiting, sleeping, or doing some processing and it is interrupted. When it is in the waiting process, if you do the interruption to the thread, or it is in the sleeping process, if you do interruption in that thread, or it is doing some processing, there also if you interrupted the thread, then interrupted exception will be raised. Next, no such field exception. If you try to access a method or a variable which is not defined in a class, in that case, you will find no such field exception. Right. Next, no such method exception. If a method is not found in a class, if you try to access the method which is not present, in that case, no such method exception will come. Runtime exception. It represents any exception which occurs during the running of the program. Next, arithmetic exception. An exceptional condition which has occurred in an arithmetic operation. Class cast exception. It is raised when we try to cast an object of one class into another class type. That is, if we try to change the type of object from one class to another class, in that case, we will find class cast exception. Right. Array index out of bounds exception. So it is thrown to indicate that an array has been accessed with an illegal index. That illegal index is nothing but if you try to access a negative index. So there are no any negative index values for arrays. If you try to access an element with a negative index, then it shows, it throws an error or an exception. Or your array size is 5, but you want to access an element which is present at 50th position. There also an exception rises. Next, null pointer exception. This exception is raised when referring to the members of a null object. If that object represents nothing, that object represents nothing, but you want to access the parameters of that object. In that case, it shows null pointer object, null pointer exception. Number format exception. So a method couldn't convert a string into a numeric format. So when you try to do that one, it is number format exception will be raised, right? These are all the different types of exceptions. So here I'll give you some examples for some exceptions what we discussed till now. Now this is the arithmetic exception demo. Now here arithmetic exception divide by 0 occurs. Arithmetic exception divide by 0 occurs in this program. Right. So same example we seen earlier also. That's why I'm not explaining much here. next example, string index out of bounds exception. So here you can see that here I have taken a class. I have written my main method. Now string A is equal to, so what I initialized, this is like chipping that I initialized. What is the length of my string? It contains 22 characters, right? Now I try to access a character which is present at position 24. Actually, my string length is 22, but I try to access the string which is present at 25th element. That is at 24th position I want to access. Their string index out of bounds exception will arise. Right. So this is an example for another exception, string index out of bounds exception. Now here you can see null pointer exception. Now here I have taken a class and this is the main method. Here I am writing the try block. String A is equal to null. Here I have written nothing. Now, but I want to access a character at 0. So this object, this is a string object. A is the string object which contains null, but I try to access its character. So since it contains null, here null pointer exception will arise. Right. This is an example for null pointer exception. Next, file not found exception. So here you can see that. So I have I used the java.io.file, and here I have written a class. Here I have written the main method. Here, whatever the file I have written here, that doesn't exist, but I try to access I try to read that file. Since this file doesn't exist, here this exception, file not found exception, rises. Right. Next, number format exception. So here you can see integer dot parseInt Aki here I written. Here Aki is a string. So may I convert this string into integer? But I try to convert it into integer. In this case, I'll get number format exception. I cannot convert string into number. So that's why I'll get a string number format exception. Next, IO exception. Now here you can see that. So I have created a scanner class. And here I want to read the line, whatever represented in the scanner class. Now here I want to find whether an exception is occurred or not. Right. So this is this represents the IO exception. So if you provide any keyboard specific errors, their IO exception should be occurred. Next, here this is array index out of bounds exception. Now here you defined an array with size 5 elements. You want to insert an element at position 6. But actually the size of your array is 5 only. It can hold 5 elements only. That is, the index values are represented from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Up to this only the index values are represented. But at index 6, I want to insert an element 9. So this is an array index out of bounds error. 6 index is not there. Right. So this type of error is to be called as array index out of bounds exception. Next, user defined exceptions. Next, we need to talk about user defined exceptions. Now, till now, whatever the exceptional classes that we are using, all those exceptional classes are predefined exceptional classes. Right. So suppose your program may have arithmetic exception. We are using arithmetic exception class. Your program may contain array index out of bounds exception. You are using array index out of bounds exception class. Like that, whatever the exception occurred, for that exception or for throwing a new exception also. Suppose here you have a statement hello. That statement hello, you want to throw it as an arithmetic exception. You want to throw it as an arithmetic exception. In that case also, you are using the predefined exceptional classes only, right? But if you want to define your own exceptional class, is it possible? Yes, my own exceptional class can be defined. So without using the predefined exceptional classes, I can create my own exceptional class and I can use my exceptional class to handle the exceptions which occurred in my program. So that we are going to explain. Now here you can see the example. Class one extends exception. Now here this is a superclass of all the exceptions. Now here I have created a constructor with a parameter message. So that message should be taken from the superclass, whatever the superclass, from the exception class. Here exception class is the superclass. One is the child class. Now with this code, I created my own exceptional class whose name is own. Here I created my own exceptional class whose name is own. Right. Now here I have taken a class throws example 2. Here I have taken the main method. Now I want to try some code. Now mark is equal to integer dot parseInt args of 0. Whatever the value I given to this args of 0, that value is to be converted into integer that is stored into a value, a variable mark. So now if mark is greater than 100, so now I want to throw an exception, right? What that exception? My exception type is own. Now, this is my own exceptional class. I am not using any predefined exceptional class. Here I created my own exceptional class. The same exceptional class I am using. So earlier we written this statement as throw new arithmetic exception, throw new null pointer exception, throw new array index out of bounds exception. Like that we written. All those are the predefined exceptional classes. But now I don't want to use those predefined exceptional classes. I want to create my own exceptional class and I want to use my own exceptional class to throw my exceptions, right? So this is my own exceptional class I created. Now here I am using the same exceptional class for throwing this exception. Actually, becoming greater than 100 is not an exception. Suppose if I conducted the exam for 150 marks, getting 100 marks is not an exception, right? But here I am thinking that getting marks greater than 100 is an exception. I want to throw that exception through my own exceptional class, right? So for that, I am using the keyword throw new, my own exceptional class own greater than 100, right? So after that, I want to print the marks. And here I have written the catch statement. Here I have written the catch statement and exception card, whatever the exception card that I want to print. Next, finally statement that I want to write. When I am executing this program, I'll get this statement exception card greater than 100 and completed. Like that I will get. Right. So this is about your creating own exceptions. Right. Next one, exception handling with overriding. Right. Where overriding concept occurs? When you have the same method in the superclass and subclass. If you have same method in the superclass and subclass, there you can get the concept of overriding, right? When a superclass method, that is overridden method, declares that it can throw an exception, then the subclass method must also declare that it can throw the same kind of exception. Suppose, for example, in my superclass, so suppose let us say A is my superclass, which contains a method 1, which throws, it declared as that it throws an exception such as arithmetic exception, right? So now this method is written here in my class A. Now I want to write class B, which extends this class A. In this class B, I'm going to write the same method, method 1. Here also, if this method is able to throw an exception, the overriding method should also throw the same exception, right? Or subtype of exception, right? That you need to write. To handle the exception while you overriding a method, you will note three important rules. What are those three rules? Let us see those three rules. First rule, if an overridden method doesn't throw an exception using throws class, then overriding method cannot throw any checked or compile time exception. Overriding method can throw any unchecked or runtime exception. Okay. So your method which is present in the super class doesn't uses any throwing of exceptions. In that case, the subclass method can't throw the checked or compile time exceptions, but it can throw the unchecked or runtime exceptions. That is the first rule that you need to know. Second one, if an overridden method throws an unchecked or runtime exception, then the overriding method can throw any unchecked or runtime exception, and overriding method can throw the same exception which is thrown by the overridden method. Right. So this is the superclass method. This is the subclass methods. Right. If a superclass method throws an unchecked or runtime exception, the subclass method can also throw any unchecked or runtime exception or the same exception which is thrown by the superclass method. And third one, if the superclass method throws a checked or compile time exception, then subclass method can throw an exception which is subclass of superclass methods exception. So what is the sub exception for this thrown exception, superclass method thrown exception? That can only be thrown by this subclass method, and it cannot throw the exception which is a superclass of this exception, and this can throw any unchecked or runtime exception. The subclass method can throw any unchecked or runtime exception. Right. These three are the cases. So first case, what is the first case? First case is if superclass method doesn't throw any exception. In that case, subclass method cannot throw the checked exceptions, but it can throw the unchecked exceptions. Now, if the superclass method throws unchecked or runtime exception, subclass method can throw the unchecked exceptions and the same exception or of the superclass method. If it throws checked or compile time exception, in that case, the subclass method can throw all the subclasses of this exception, and it can throw unchecked exceptions, but it cannot throw superclasses of that particular exception. These three are the conditions that you need to remember. Right. Now here, this is the example for that. This is a class parent. Here it contains a method. It is not throwing any exception. Right. Now here, this is the this is the child class which extends this parent class, which is having the same method as in my child class, but this throws arithmetic exception. This is an unchecked exception which can be thrown. Right. Now, this is about your overriding method, exception handling at method overriding. Right. This is another one more example, throws IO exception. Right. One more example. Next, chained exceptions. What about the chained exceptions? So in Java, the chained exception is a technique that enables programmers to associate one exception with another exception. So here, a chained exception is created by wrapping an existing exception in a new exception, which becomes the root cause of new exception. Right. So the new exception can provide additional information, while the original exception contains the actual error message or the stack trace. Whatever the print stack trace method prints, that information will be provided in the actual error message. The additional message can be provided with the sub message or the wrapping message, new exception. Whatever the new exception we created, with that we can provide. Now, the chained exception can be created using one of the constructors of the exception class. What are those constructions? Here I have three constructions. First one is throwable class, throwable class, throwable string, and throwable class. right? These two are the constructors that what we have for the throwable class. By using these two, we can create the chained exceptions. So what is this class? Throwable class. A Java constructor creates a new exception object with the specified cause exception. Whatever the cause I mentioned here, with the specified cause, a new exception can be created. Right. Now, here you can see the second one is a Java constructor creates a new throwable object with the message and the cause. Here, this is the message and this is the cause. This allows for chaining of exceptions with more detailed information. So these two constructors of throwable class can be used to create the chained exceptions in Java. Now, for chained exceptions, we can use two methods. One method is getCause method, another method is initCause method. Now, getCause method is used for accessing the exception or error that triggered the current exception which is thrown for getting the message. And this initCause method determines the reason for calling exception. So these two are the methods that we use for enabling the chained exceptions in your throwable class. Right. Next, this is the example for that exceptions. So here you can see I have a class, I have the main method which throws IO exception. Now here I have written a number format exception. That is, I have a string that I want to convert it into integer. Now here I have created a new runtime exception and I have used the method initCause method. So what is the actual cause of exception that can be printed here, right? So this is about your chained exceptions, right? So I hope that you all understood how these can be executed. Now I'll show you the execution of user-defined exceptions, how user-defined exceptions can be created and how these can be executed. That I want to explain you. I want to show you by executing. Now I'm going to share you my screen. Now I want to show you how user-defined exception can be executed. Now, here I want to create a class own that extends exception. So for creating my own class, and here I'm writing the exception program. So where I want to use my own class to throw the exception. So here, now, so this is my entire program. So now I'm trying to run the program. What happens? Let us see. Here it is showing some error, main method not found. So now wherever my main method is present, that should be written first. So that's why I'm going to write it first. So here I'm going to write my program first. Right. Now I'm trying to run the program. Now here also some exception is showing. So what is that exception? Now here you can see completed. The message completed is printed and e dot guess exception caught and e dot get message. Whatever the message that I have written, that message was printed. Right. Now here you can see. So within the try block, I have written right. Now suppose, so here I want to take the marks as 50, right? Now what happens? Let us see. Expected common. Okay, right here some error is there. Now here let us see what happens. Marks is equal to 50. My program is completed, right? So since here I have written throw statement, that's why this was not printed. Here I'm going to write the statement here, right? Now I want to run the program. Now marks is equal to 50 and my program is completed. Suppose if I increase the marks to 150, what happens? Now, since marks is equal to 150, here marks is equal to 150 printed, 150 is greater than 100. So my exception is greater than 100 is occurred and it is thrown. Here it is thrown, it is caught, that is exception caught, and it printed the message and finally block is printed, right? All the things are printed, right? So I hope that you understand how this works, how my own class works. Now here, if you want to change the name of your class, you can change it. My own exception class, right? Like that I want to change it. Now here, I want to write my own exception class, right? Now here also, I want to write my own exception class, right? I want to throw new my own exception class that I want to use. Now greater than 100, whatever the message is there here. Now that message I want to print marks greater than 100, right? Now let us try to run the program. What happens? Let us see. Now it is running. So if we get the output, then we can see how it is executing. So here's the session ended. So that's why again I'm going to run the program. Now, so see again I printed the program. Now it is running. Oh, it is taking much time for executing. I'll refresh the screen. Again, I will try to run the program. Now I have pasted my program. Right? Because of net problem, it is taking much time to execute this program. But anyway, we seen example already how own exception class can be created and how that own exception class can be used to throw an exception that we already seen, already executed. No problem there. I'm closing here since it is taking much time to run. So I hope that you understand all the things about exception handling. So
Yes, I am following.
okay. Shall we wind up the session?
Yeah, no problem.
Try to run the programs and try to write the programs for exception handling with multiple catch statements and try nested tries and nested catch statements like that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.